I wish to briefly review how South Africa joined BRICS and outline the pertinent issues that led to our membership and which are still relevant as we will host the last summit of the first cycle of BRICS meeting. Now, you know, BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The incoming administration of President Zuma in 2009 reviewed the global trend for economic growth and development and decided to pursue a closer relationship with the BRICS countries as the new growth poles for the global economy. This decision is justified when one considers the profile of BRICS today, i.e. it consisting of 25% of the global GDP in PPP terms, 30% of global land area, and 43% of global population. That is what BRICS consists of. The contribution of BRICS to global economic growth has reached over 50% over the past decade, making it the principal driver of global economic development. Depending on whether you measure BRICS economics in dollar terms or in PP terms, that is the purchasing power term, over the next decade, the BRICS share of world GDP will increase, and by 2020, it will account for about 37 to 38%, and by 2030, this would increase to as much as 45%, that is almost half of global GDP. The first BRICS summit took place in 2009 in the Russian Federation and focused on issues such as reform of the global financial architecture. Minister Konama Shibane also wrote at that time to the BRICS counterparts, indicates South Africa's desire to collaborate closer with these countries to pursue the restructuring of global political and economic architecture into one that is more equitable, balanced, which rests on the important pillar of multilateralism. It was emphasized that Africa, as an important member of the Global South and the global community, had to take its rightful place in a new equitable world order. South Africa has already pursued this vision in the context of the United Nations as well as other structures such as the G20, the G8. On the 23rd of December 2010, Minister Konama Shibane was informed by her Chinese counterpart that the President of the Republic of South Africa, that the President of the People's Republic of China as the chairperson of BRICS, following consultation with other BRICS member states, wished to invite South Africa to join BRICS, and therefore invited President Zuma to attend the third BRICS summit, which was hosted in Sanya in 2011, that is in China. One might recall at our attendance of that summit, the events that marked the global landscape entailed the global financial crisis as well as the situation in Libya. BRICS have served together on the United Nations Security Council. All the BRICS members were members of the United Nations Security Council in 2011 and collaborated closely on issues related to international peace and security, such as Syria currently. In respect of the global financial crisis, the support of BRICS countries through its trade and investment cooperation was notably low-income countries, of which most are in Africa, assisted these countries to weather the impact of the crisis, of the financial crisis. BRICS countries, including South Africa, have already collectively contributed to weathering the effects of the international financial crisis and worked for the common interest of the international community in the wake of this global crisis, such as committing $75 billion to the IMF. In the specific case of South Africa, our economic cooperation with BRICS countries has increasingly strengthened. Our trade figures have grown significantly, and we have reduced our negative trade balance with these countries from 57 billion rands in 2008 to 23 billion in 2011. We expect a further significant reduction once the final figures for 2012 are released. South Africa exports to China grew 46%, while export to India grew by 20%, to Brazil by 14%, and to Russia by 7%. The Standard Bank has projected that BRICS Africa trade will increase threefold from $150 billion in 2010 to $530 billion in 2015, and as a result, the BRICS share of Africa's total trade will increase from 1/5, that was in 2010, to 1/3 over the next 5 years. Foreign direct investment from BRICS to African countries is projected to increase almost threefold from $60 billion in 2009 to more than $150 billion by 2015. Therefore, the theme that was approved by Cabinet for this summit, i.e. BRICS and Africa, Partnership for Development, Integration and Industrialization, acknowledge the various engagement activities of BRICS countries vis-à-vis the African continent, providing economic cooperation as well as other opportunities for skill development, job creation, and sustainable development best practices. The estimated financial requirement to close Africa's infrastructure deficit, according to the African Development Bank, is around $39 billion annually until 2020. The bank stated that as much as this financing requirement is a challenge, African governments have a wide range of policy options that would open new sources of finance. In this regard, I am pleased to inform that our BRICS leaders will receive a report from the finance ministers on the feasibility and viability of setting a new BRICS-led development bank for mobilizing resources for infrastructure and sustainable development projects in BRICS and other emerging economies and developing countries to supplement the existing efforts of multilateral and regional financial institutions for the global growth and development. This bank will inter alia utilize the surplus reserves of BRICS countries to support development initiatives among emerging markets and developing countries to support a new model of South-South cooperation and financing. Other summit outcomes entail a first dialogue between BRICS leaders and African heads of state and governments from the 8 regional economic communities and the NAPAD Presidential Infrastructure Championing Initiative, as well as the incoming chairperson of the African Union and the chairperson of the AU Commission, Dr. Dlamini Nkosazana Zuma, to discuss the issues of infrastructure funding for which the African Union has tasked our president to play a leading role. We will also strengthen the structures that facilitate intra-BRICS collaboration between our captains of industries and the academics. I thank you very much.
we decided to interact with society as a whole in various forms so that members of our society understand and appreciate the challenges and the opportunities which exist as a result of the work of the International Relations Department as we interact with other countries. It is for that reason, Executive Mayor, that we asked yourselves and the province to convene this, and we'll be doing it in almost all other provinces before we go to eThekwini for the BRICS Summit. The BRICS is a structure which emerged as an imperative of development. As you would recall or note the countries which are there, you have got Russia, which was part of the Soviet bloc before the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War. Up until the Soviet Union became what it was, Russia was one of the most underdeveloped countries in the world, actually, which was under a monarchy. It was almost a feudal system. As you know, China, for a long time, China had been undermined because people felt they produced inferior goods, the problems in China. Brazil also had its own challenges. Today, as we stand, and India also has its own challenges. Today, as we stand in front of you, are some of the most shining examples of development and economic growth. And that is why, given our background and given our position in the continent, we felt it's important for us to participate in the activities of BRICS and strengthen our relationships, as the Deputy Minister has indicated. Global politics and the economics of the world is beginning to change. Firstly, you had a bipolar world, which was mainly the West and what was called the East then. During the time of the Cold War, the balance shifted to what we call the unipolar world, which was the dominance of the West as led by the United States, without a counterbalance, both militarily, economically, and politically. The emergence and the organization of developing countries, especially those which are critical in the development of the economies of the world, became an important factor in the global politics and the economic and the political economies of the world. As the Deputy Minister has said, we have been invited to join BRICS in the summit which was held in China, and mainly invited by President Hu Jintao, who was the host at that time. South Africa has been accepted as part of BRICS, and some may say, but we have got BRICS, and then we have got IPSA. What is the difference? And it's not a duplication of effort, but we'll come to that not very long. But the most important part, people have been criticizing South Africa, that we're punching beyond our weight. Because the countries which we're partnering with in BRICS have got several elements. One of them, they've got very large populations. As you know, China, India, Russia, Brazil, they've got very huge populations. Two, they've got well-developed economies, and particularly well-developed manufacturing sectors. And they enjoy a relative economic growth even in the time of recession. Their population is highly skilled, well-educated, highly skilled, in spite of the fact that their populations are quite huge. Now the question would be, why South Africa joins BRICS? As I said before, that we shared trenches for a very long time in the struggle. We shared perspectives and almost agree on the path of development which the world or the countries should take. We do have different perspectives from time to time and don't agree from time to time, but those issues are not the most critical parts of the work which we're supposed to be doing in the BRICS. One question one may ask, are we representing Africa in BRICS? No. BRICS is not formed by organizations of continents. It's an organization which has formed by countries, which is Russia, South Africa, Brazil, India, and China. We are there to represent our own interest in how we relate to these countries, to participate in the programs which they have, to share experiences and to share the resources which are available for the development of our countries. However, we note that it will sit in that structure, or any forum we sit in as South Africa. We carry the aspirations of a lot of African people from Cape to Cairo. And in our work and in the acts which we do, we take into account that we must make it possible for the African continent and African countries to benefit from the achievements which we make in the international forum, to ensure that ourselves, we contribute, because if you take the whole of the continent, in terms of population size, we're almost not very far behind China and India. So therefore, it's important for us as we do this to harness the potential of the continent, to ensure that countries in the continent benefit from the relationships which we establish. And that is why, even in this summit, we'll make it as our central theme to ensure that African countries participate and ensure that they are able to benefit from whatever emerges from it. Obviously, as the BRICS moves from one country to the other, we have the responsibility to organize, determine the theme and the focus of the deliberations which are going to take place. There have been a lot of work which has been done, both at the bilateral level and also at the multilateral level amongst the countries, as to what are the issues which we need to deal with. The Deputy Minister has already indicated that there's an intention to form what we call the BRICS Development Bank, something which will look like the African Development Bank, or the DBSA as you know it, but a bank which will be formed by the 4 countries to ensure that by the 5 countries, to ensure that we are able to mobilize resources together for the purposes of ensuring that we build infrastructure, make resources available for the continent of Africa and also other emerging markets, that they are able to meet their objectives, especially with regard to their Millennium Development Goals. We are also in the summit going to establish or create a forum of what we call the think tank. The think tank will be a forum which will be constituted by intellectuals or intelligentsia from all the countries to deliberate and discuss the issues and the challenges which our countries face, and also how we can be able to change the world to be a better place to live in, and the contributions which all of us can make to ensure that we achieve that objective. We are also going to establish, if agreed at the summit, a BRICS Business Council, that instead of only government, heads of states meeting on their own, the business people, the industry, the commerce, the banks of the 5 countries need to meet and look as to how they can coordinate, how they can share resources, how they can identify potential investment opportunities, and how those resources can be mobilized to ensure that we put investments in the various parts of the world. It is our hope that such a structure will provide opportunities for us to be able to achieve what we think we need to do, mainly to ensure that we upscale and intensify our efforts to build the infrastructure which is required for us to grow our economy, both inside the country and in the continent. And 2, that the issues we're talking about beneficiations of our natural resources, not only ourselves, but in the continent as a whole, both from the mineral resources and the agro resources and the bioprospecting, which is supposed to take place, as you know, that Africa constitutes one of the largest mass on earth where human beings reside. We hope that all these endeavors by our heads of state, in which South Africa is part of, will bear fruit and will see more and more investments which are going to come in. What are then the implications of all these things for us? As you would know, that most of us and most of our municipalities, provinces, they spend much of their time moving to Italy, to Europe, to United States, and so on, to try and entice investments to come into the country. And what are the challenges which we face in that regard? It's because when Polokwane goes, I heard one adverse to say, visit our province is malaria-free. Meaning that don't go where there's malaria, potential malaria. Visit our province. So you have that type of competition. We sometimes, we actually shoot ourselves in the foot because we go out there and actually compete amongst ourselves instead of combining our efforts to try and get investments into the country from the various parts of the world. We think this effort of bringing the BRICS closer to yourselves, and that is why we have to sit down and discuss with you, and we hope that this discussion is not going to end here. It's going to permeate to the legislatures, it's going to go to our parastatals, it's going to go everywhere else. That let's try to strategically to focus our attention into the relationships, to build the relationships with the BRIC countries. Because the framework, not only the bilateral level, but also the multilateral level is much better than we would find anywhere else in any structure or any relationship which we have with the world out there. It is our hope that as we develop our economy, and sometimes we forget, when we look for investment, we only go to Europe and Asia, and we forget that our African continent has got the greatest potential to do investments in our country too. It will be important, Executive Mayor, that when you do your work, don't forget to go to Mozambique and say, this is what we are, this is what we have. You may as well find that there are quite a number of Mozambicans or Angolans or Ugandans or Nigerians or whoever, or Zimbabweans who would be willing to come and put their money and invest in the various areas of our economy and to make sure that we grow our economy and we create more better potential for what we are doing. It is my honor, therefore, on behalf of my colleagues, the ministers responsible for the preparation for BRICS, that we inform the province and other stakeholders that the program to continue to educate our people about BRICS, to debate the issues around BRICS, is going to continue. It's not ending today. Workshops are going to be held, where questions are going to be answered. We are going to be sending people all over the place. If you have got structure which need more detailed information, a discussion with us, we are always available. Even if it's not us ministers, we have got a lot of competent administrators whose daily job is to wake up in the morning and work for BRICS and work about BRICS and talk about BRICS all the time. And they have got more information and they can be able to answer any question which is relevant for you to be able to continue to do your work. And we hope this effort is not going to end here, but it will be a beginning that international relations and how we interact with other countries is not, while it's a national competence, it is not for national government alone. It's for all South Africans, it's for all spheres of government, it's for business, it's for labor, it's for civil society, for us to understand and know the challenges which we face, so that yourself, as you make decisions, individual decisions, where you are working, you should be able to take into account what challenges we face.